Yesterday, Games Workshop laid out the steps on how you prepare for a battle in 10th edition. I'm Christian, run Carmian, subscribe if you want, blah blah blah. Okay, step 1 is choose the battle size. They have given up on trying to balance battles at low points costs. Instead, this is Combat Patrol, an old term for a new thing. You buy a starter box set and somehow this is balanced against all other starter boxes. No other unit choices available. From this image, as in the last 2 editions, the battle size also determines table size. Small game, smaller space needed. 1,000 points can be played on space the size of a desk. Not my desk, I would have to finish all the half-built models scattered around, and I just got them into nice neat piles. Battle sizes are 1,000 points, 2,000 points, and 3,000 points. You can still play point values in between or lower than 1,000 points, but 1, 2, and 3k is what it's optimized for. Optimized doesn't mean balanced. What I wanted the new battle sizes to be were 750 points, 1,500 points, 2,250 points, and 3,000 points. Increments of 750 points, and missions for each level, like in 9th edition. I thought this was something done right. 1,500 points is great for experienced players to have a game in an afternoon or an evening, and not too big for new players to struggle with. 2,000 points has always felt too big for me. At tournaments, even very experienced people struggle to fit it into a 3-hour game and end up talking through the hypothetical of their last turn or turns, and now it's a debating match on who would win. Even friendly games take about 4 hours at a calm pace, and if you don't want to forget your rules or mistakes, that's the pace you'll have to play it at. Unless you both have elite armies with very few units. If points per model are fairly similar, then we may see game length increasing, the introduction of reactions and hang on, I have a thing, let me decide if I want to do it, can slow the game a little. I recommend when starting out playing 10th edition to play at 1,000 points and see how long it takes. This is the level I used to play at and I found it was a good size. You could get 2 1,000 point games in an afternoon in the previous editions. Power level is out. Power level was a quick way of making an army and very convenient for crusade and narrative play. Don't care what the models have, don't optimize each special weapon, go with what they're carrying and it will be an about equal game. I liked power level. It meant I could meet someone at a club, gaming club, but the joke is the idea that I would never go outside and meet strangers without arranging everything beforehand and checking that they weren't a potential vampire hunter serial killer. But I could meet someone, tell them my opponent didn't show up, certainly not drained of blood in a nearby alley, and in seconds figure out an army of roughly equal size and play a casual game with what we had. If you remembered power level existed, let me know in the text box below how often you used it and if you thought it was useful. But I guess this means that weapons on a unit will still have their points micromanaged like in all previous editions, unless they do the Age of Sigmar and the current Arcs of Omen point system for a lot of armies where the unit cost is set per model and all equipment beyond that is free. Choose your faction is obviously still part of the game. This is just, are you using Space Marines or Tau? This is fixed, but there are exceptions like Genestealer Cult that can still use local Imperial Guard, and if you bought a big expensive knight, and they really want you to buy a big expensive knight, then you can use one. This is identical to the rules added a few months ago that let you do this exact thing. I mentioned in my data card analysis video that keywords would remain and your army choice is one of the keywords. The units in the army, with the exceptions I mentioned, need to have the same faction keyword. How this will work with the Inquisition and Assassins will probably be another one of the list of exceptions on a new exceptions document looking like this. The article from Games Workshop also says you can do mixed Imperial units in a more casual play, which is their way of saying there is still casual play, now combining Crusade and open play into one. It is also their way of saying, just do what you want, all our rules are guidelines, figure out your own fun, just buy our toys first. Next section, select detachment. I was right. Earlier this week in a video that just pinged in the top right, I said that detachments would decide what stratagems you get and what units you can take. I said that there would be fast unit-based detachments that would give you fast stratagems and reactions and so forth. Again, I was right, this isn't a told you so, because you believed me, I just like saying it. So to add on what I said in that video, detachment choice replaces sub-faction. So an all-bike Ultramarine army will play the same as an all-bike White Scar army. It stops the blue scars of I painted them blue, but there are better rules if we say that they're white, so let's just count them as white. If it reduces white supremacy, I can favour it. and so you get the feel of your sub-faction if you play to the sub-faction background. Lots of monsters for Behemoth, jet bikes for Siam Han, and heavy weapons for Imperial Fists, and so on. To start off the edition, each army will have their own detachment, so you can use whatever army you want in its base form. This will probably look like the Arcs of Olin detachment rule. There are fewer stratagems, but still perhaps too many. Get 6 with your detachment, plus the ones in the main book. I think you'll still have to remember about 20 strats, but this is fewer than the 40 plus previously. Overall, I'm not seeing a reduction in the number of rules you have to learn. Each army is still having unit rules, plus unit reactions on their unit data cards, but coming off the data cards are universal special rules the unit has, which are in the main book. There's still an army special rule, and detachment grants you a detachment special rule instead of it being a sub-faction rule. Like I said, sub-factions like White Scars is more based on your unit choice. As codexes are released, we will see new versions of this rule, which will replace the basic one we get once 10th edition launches. There are still the combat doctrines which change every turn, and you have to remember and announce them change it. I find opponents are kind if you forget to announce it, but this is now at the start of your turn instead of the start of the battle round. Battle round means game turn instead of player turn. They changed the terminology because having 2 turns in a turn in a game that lasts 5 or 6 turns was confusing. Then we have even more stratagems on the detachment to learn in addition to the ones in the main rule. And then for character advancements, which will be relics, traits, upgrades, and stat modifiers, well, you can have 4 of them. Games Workshop have said this will simplify things, but it still took them nearly 1,000 words to explain just this part. Looks like I'm needed to do this as a full-time job. The last thing you do is choose your Warlord. This is the army leader, the general. Now, the release yesterday specifies you have to include 1 character, but otherwise, from this alone, almost anything goes. I expect it to be like Age of Sigmar, and have talked about this elsewhere, but the interesting thing here is that it specifies that you include 1 character. I thought there may still be a division of characters into leaders and support, as in the HQ and elite type characters. This may make it possible to have an army led by a support character, have a cult biophagus lead a menagerie of Genestealer occult monsters. Can you imagine a menagerie of monsters managed by a biophagus menagerie manager? So, we can expect to see a greater variety of armies. In other news, they are going to relaunch their app with an army builder. Their previous app did very badly when it first came out, and it wasn't fit for purpose. Other websites like Battlescribe and Warpedia did the same thing, but better and for free. Games Workshop doesn't approve of these sites and may start cracking down on them once their app relaunches. That would be a shame. They provided a great service. Now, I'm not admitting to ever using them, but Games Workshop has been very consistently harsh on fan creations before. That probably won't change. Overall, this doesn't feel like a rules reset like we had between 2nd and 3rd and between 7th and 8th editions. It invalidates the codex. I'll put my video on that in the end cards. It so far feels like 10th edition is 9th edition with a bit more Age of Sigmar sprinkled in. Let me know what you think, and if you're still positive about 10th edition or if you're having some doubts creeping in. I'm going to move off to the side now and perfectly tune my voice to sound like lo-fi. Sub-factions like White Scars is more based. It's just more based.